North Africa is home to some incredible Roman ruins, but Dougga in Tunisia is one of the most spectacular. It's about an hour-and-a-half drive out of Tunis through the lovely countryside, but I think it's well worth the effort to get there. In this video, I'll take you around this amazing and beautiful ruin peacefully set amongst the olive groves. First off, in order to see a relatively intact Roman city, you have to typically leave Italy and Europe. With the exception of Ostia, Pompeii, and Herculaneum, most Roman ruins in Europe have been pillaged, quarried, built upon, lived in, and modified so much that very little remains of their original layout and structure. If you don't want to fill in 99% of the missing city with your imagination, then you have to go to places where once the Roman city was abandoned, it was pretty much left alone. North Africa and the Middle East have a number of exceptionally well-preserved ruins, and Dougga is a shining example of this. Walking through its streets and amongst its houses and temples, you'll see mosaic floors preserved in place, see ruts from wagon wheels on the roads, and even public latrines where the ancients did their business. So first, a one-minute history lesson. The Kingdom of Carthage was a powerful city-state in what is now Tunisia that ruled the Western Mediterranean through trade and naval strength. It was founded in the 9th century BCE, and it controlled North Africa, Spain, and Sicily. Carthage fought Rome in the Punic Wars, with Hannibal nearly defeating Rome in the Second Punic War, which lasted from 218 to 201 BCE. However, Rome destroyed Carthage in 146 BCE, ending its empire and making it a Roman province. Surrounding the Carthaginian territory was the Numidian Empire, in what is now Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya. After the fall of Carthage, Rome gradually took control of their territory as well, finally making Numidia a Roman province around 100 BCE. So back to Dougga. Dougga was originally called Tuga and was a Numidian and Carthaginian settlement. It became part of the Roman Empire under Julius Caesar around the year 46 BCE, evolving into a city where Roman colonists and locals lived side by side. Though its early history is a bit murky, the city grew significantly in the 3rd and 2nd centuries BCE, as seen in the Numidian Mausoleum, a well-preserved 21-meter-high tomb that still dominates the landscape. And when the Romans arrived, they didn't erase what came before. Instead, Dougga became a bit of a hybrid Numidian-Roman city. Then over the next 250 years, Roman architecture proceeded to remake the city. So what will you see there? Well, when you get out of your car or bus, the first thing you'll see is the theater. It's right next to the parking lot. It was built in the mid-2nd century AD or CE. Dougga's theater, it's a stunning venue. With around 3,500 seats, it could accommodate most of Dougga's estimated 5,000 residents. Although the stage building no longer stands, its re-erected columns frame a lovely view of the ruins, olive groves, and valley below. The city's most famous monument, the Capitolium, is a well-preserved temple dedicated to the Capitolian triad of gods and goddesses. The king of the gods Jupiter, his wife and sister Juno, and daughter Minerva. These three were central figures in the public religion of Rome. Now, this temple was built around the same time as the theater in the 2nd century CE, and it's largely intact, with its Corinthian columns and many reliefs and inscriptions still visible. Inside, statues of the gods once stood in the niches. On either side of the Capitolium are squares which made up the Forum. Now, you'll need a bit of imagination with this, though, since in the 6th century the Byzantines, who controlled the region, repurposed it into a fortress by building a wall using stones harvested from other nearby Roman buildings. Now, no respectable Roman town would be complete without a triumphal arch or two, and Dougga is no exception. This monumental arch was built to honor the Emperor Alexander Severus. Another, less well-preserved arch honoring his great-uncle and earlier emperor, Septimius Severus, is located down the hill close to the Cyclops Baths. Nearby, you can see the huge cisterns used to store water. They were fed by an aqueduct and a nearby spring, and could store over 6,000 cubic meters of water to power the baths and fountains of the city downhill from it. A little outside the core of the city sits the grand temple of Juno Callisti, built around the same time as the nearby Severan Arch. Juno Callistius was a Roman adaptation of the Punic goddess of fertility. Much of the tall columns and a semicircular colonnade remains, which blends local and Roman influences. Dougga's Roman baths were social hubs as well as bathing facilities, and the Licinian baths, completed in the early 3rd century CE, include a well-preserved frigidarium, or cold room, with stunning valley views. Beneath them, tunnels for heating furnaces to power the warm rooms, or caldarium, are still visible. Nearby, down the hill a bit, the Cyclops Baths, named after a mosaic now housed in the Bardo Museum, feature a Roman public toilet, fully complete with 12 keyhole-shaped seats arranged in a horseshoe pattern. Hey neighbor! The house of the Trifolium, near the Cyclops Baths, is a grand Roman villa, or domus, with a restored central courtyard. Now, fun fact, the English words domestic and domicile both originated with the Latin word domus. At the base of the city ruins is an ancient Numidian tower tomb from before the Roman period. It has a mix of architectural styles from as far away as Greece and Anatolia or Turkey, hinting at some of this region's diverse cultural heritage. Now, by the 4th century CE, Dougga, like much of northwestern Tunisia, and the rest of the Roman Empire for that matter, was in a state of decline. The Vandal invasion and the later Byzantine period accelerated this downfall. So the once influential metropolis transformed into a rural village, with people living amongst the ruins. This decline continued through the Arab Islamic period and lasted until French colonization in the late 1800s, when Dougga was recognized as an archaeological site rather than a village. More recently, in 1997, Dougga was deservedly inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So for your visit, here's a few things to know before you go. Number one, wear comfortable shoes. The site is huge, and if you have mobility challenges, much of the site will be difficult to access, since it's set on a hillside and there's stairs as well as lots of uneven and unpaved pathways. Especially if you're coming in the summer, I'd suggest trying to arrive as early as you can. The site opens at 8:30 in the morning. Now, regardless of when you arrive though, be sure to bring a hat, sun cream, and water. There is very little shade. Now, we went in early March and arrived at 10 a.m. It was cool, around 15 centigrade or 60 Fahrenheit when we started out. But after walking the hills in the warming weather, by the time we got back to the car at noon, it was about 24 centigrade or 75 Fahrenheit, and we were all sweating. There's no cafes or restaurants on site other than an ice cream and coffee vendor, and there's no food nearby either. So it would be wise to pack a lunch and snacks. And finally, if you don't know anything about Roman history or ancient city planning, I'd suggest either reading ahead and bringing a map or hiring a guide. Now, I didn't use a guide, and I did fine. But I taught history for over 2 decades, and I've been to dozens of other Roman sites. So finally, my verdict. Now, I've visited lots of Roman ruins, and one thing that shouldn't surprise me is that typically the best preserved ruins are in out-of-the-way places. You know, spots that weren't convenient sources of building materials for later residents. When you visit Rome, most ancient temples have barely a column or two remaining. You need to go to North Africa and the Middle East to find the most stunning remnants of Rome, and Tunisia's Dougga is a shining example of this. Thanks for tuning in. If you found this valuable, a subscribe is sincerely appreciated and helps me to continue the channel.